Text messages for those anti-Trump FBI investigators raising new concerns about the Russia probe and possible bias against the president.
I don't think this trail is going to stop at the door of the Russians. I think it's going to stop where the Democratic Party came through the door of the FBI. I think this is Watergate Part 2.
JP Morgan Chase announcing yesterday plans to raise hourly pay for employees and add thousands of new jobs. Yet some Democrats won't admit the economy is winning.
Donald Trump becomes president, and all of a sudden we're growing at 3% 3 quarters in a row. That is something that has not been accomplished since early during the Bush years.
We need a physical barrier. We also, though, need an end to chain migration and the visa lottery. If they've shown willingness to negotiate, we're going to get a deal.
You guys are absolutely obsessed with everything to do with collusion, if it has anything to do with the president.
If they weren't obsessed with Russia and some sort of collusion that has zero evidence, then they would actually have to talk about the accomplishments of this president, and they don't want to do that.
It's fine by me if you never leave, and we can live like this forever. It's fine by me.
Every time I hear Andy Grammer, not only do I think of him playing in our green room for 3 hours, but I also think of him on 3rd Street Promenade in Los Angeles, in Santa Monica, where before, when he was unknown, would just sit there in those little hallways and would have put his guitar out, and people used to throw money in it. Little did they know they were supporting one of the future stars of music.
He sat in front of the Forever 21 store, and now he's a big star, and that's fine by him.
And that's the only place I shop, by the way.
Forever 21?
Yeah, it's the only place I feel comfortable.
What do they have there, Brian?
Fragrances.
Okay.
Right?
Is that right?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I didn't think so.
I'm not
That's a clothing store. All right. We've got some disturbing news. If true, it looks like there was somebody at the FBI who is essentially trying to pick the next president of the United States. I know you've heard over the last 48 hours about the secret society, the missing text mail, also the insurance policy and the dossier. Well, now they're starting to put it all together, congressional investigators are, and it looks as if there is one central character, and he's half of the lovebirds at the FBI. We're talking about Peter Strzok, who was essentially taken from his high-ranking job and moved to HR, but not fired by the FBI.
All right, so we have some new information about the text messages. There are 50,000 text messages. Those don't even include the 5 months that are now missing. And many people, even sources within the FBI, are wondering, okay, why are their text messages missing, but everyone else during that same time period, their text messages aren't missing?
Yeah, by the way, in this age of technology, a Samsung phone is something the FBI chose to use and transfer. They have a complicated response when asked why they were missing the text messages, all the way up to the Mueller probe. Just a coincidence. When Robert Mueller gets the job, suddenly the text messages are back working again. But it doesn't mean some of these texts aren't really alarming. For example, 2 days after the Mueller appointment, this text appeared as these two interchanged. Strzok says this: "You and I both know the odds are nothing. If I thought it was likely, I'd be there, no question. I hesitate in part because of my gut sense and concern that there's no big there. And what he's referring to is the would-be collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia. And the interaction was about, hey, Lisa's asking him, are you going to join that probe? And he's like, listen, I don't think there's anything there. He would join the probe and get kicked out right away.
Then also the same thing, same guy, 2 days after Mueller was appointed, Strzok said this: "For me, in this case, I personally have a sense of unfinished business unleashed with the MYE mid-year exam." That was a Hillary email caper. Now I need to fix it, and I need to finish it. Jim Jordan was on.
Fix it, meaning there was a problem. We need to change the narrative. We need to fix it.
Yeah, well, we don't know. All we know, and Jim Jordan, Ohio congressman, who's been on this case, he says, look at this guy, this Peter Strzok guy. He is central to so many things that have gone haywire. Listen to this.
The central player in this entire drama, Sean, is the guy you identified, Peter Strzok. The first batch of text messages, he talks about the insurance policy in case the American people make Donald Trump president. This latest batch, he talks about unfinished business. I unleashed it during the mid-year exam, which was the code name they had for the Clinton investigation. Now he says I need to finish it and fix it. 4 minutes after that text message, he sends another message to Lisa Page where he says an investigation that leads to impeachment. If that doesn't go to their entire motive, their entire plan, what they had in store, and the animus they had for President Trump, I don't know what does. And never forget, as you pointed out in your monologue, Peter Strzok was the key guy in the Clinton investigation. Interviewed Mills, interviewed Abedin, interviewed Clinton. He was the guy who changed the exoneration.
So he's all over it. And just add to this, now the secret society reference is backed up reportedly by Senator Ron Johnson, says a whistleblower has come forward to shed more light on meetings that could have taken place off campus, off site with Peter Strzok and maybe others that might be involved. And who knows what we don't know about those 5 months worth of text messages that we don't know what they contain. What we know already is alarming. But it's amazing to me as I flipped around to see how people are handling this new news. And Ron Johnson really breaking news as if he was one of our reporters because these revelations are coming forward because he's getting these text messages that he requested. Nobody thinks this is a big deal. I mean, this is something that if I was to write an FBI drama,
other channels?
Yeah, other channels, someone would hand this back to me and go, "Where's the finesse?"
Right.
I mean, this is too deliberate. What are you in a
What
rush?
bothers me even more than those text messages, though, is this secret society or within the FBI. They're not supposed to have bias, especially when they're dealing with all these investigations.
Sure.
They're investigating the guy who's running against Hillary Clinton, and they're all in Hillary Clinton's camp and sending text messages about how they hate this guy who's running against her, and then how they're going to get him through collusion.
Well,
that is illegal.
That shows there was a bias at the FBI. How many people was it? Was it Peter Strzok? Was it more people? Terry Turchie, who was on about an hour ago talking to Brian, former FBI guy, he says this is so big he compared it to one of the greatest scandals of all time.
There's a lot of political dirty tricks going on here. I don't think this trail is going to stop at the door of the Russians. I think it's going to stop where the Democratic Party came through the door of the FBI. And I think this is Watergate Part 2.
They just never thought Trump would win. I'm just going to add to this. There's another story out today that ended that the president might have asked acting director Andy McCabe after they fired Comey, picking Chris Wray, that he was the deputy and he became the acting. And they said, well, the president asked him, who'd you vote for? Mm-hmm. You wonder why the president was wondering who you voted for?
Right.
He wants to find out not so much who's on my team, but who's not on my team.
Right. This is a Washington Post story that dropped last night at 7:45. And what did Andy McCabe said? He said, I didn't vote, Mr. President, but that now his people have leaked this story to the Washington Post to make President Trump look bad. And Mr. McCabe says he found it very disturbing that, apparently through his sources, through his connections, found it very disturbing that the President of the United States would ask a civil servant who they voted for.
Whose wife took tens of thousands of dollars from the debt from.
And the president brought that up in the meeting with Mr. McCabe and said, look, I can't believe your wife did that. And Mr. McCabe, who we heard about a month ago, would like to retire in a couple of months and leave all that FBI junk behind him. He's just disturbed by the fact.
This should be just extremely alarming for every single American. What's happening behind the scenes that we never would have known if this president had not been elected. If Hillary had been elected, none of this would have come out in the wash.
But wait, somebody not concerned? Democratic Senator Chuck Schumer.
Shocker.
I think there has been a great deal of activity on the other side intending to either divert attention from Mueller or even stand in his way. We're all worried about it. The diversion that they're trying to do, both with Mueller and with others, is not good for the country.
Diversion? He should talk to Peter Strzok, a guy in his own party.
Yeah.
There's no there.
Well, you know, this is not, even though, Brian, you say the other channels are not covering it, and Tommy Learn's going to touch on that in a moment, Devin Nunes and other members of Congress are trying to get this 4-page FISA abuse memo out. They're trying to get... It's kind of a complicated process to do it, but essentially what it does is it lays out the FBI and others' attempts to corrupt the election last November. And the people who have seen it said it is so damaging. They say heads could roll at the FBI, the Department of Justice, and this could be just the beginning.
Sarah Carter said it's going to be released in the next few weeks.
Let's hope so.
So Tommy Lahren out on the West Coast. She was talking about how the media is handling this. Let's listen.
If they weren't obsessed with Russia and some sort of collusion that has zero evidence, then they would actually have to talk about the accomplishments of this president, and they don't want to do that. So they have to focus on this, or they would have to talk about the real collusion story that's happening, unfolding before our very eyes. And again, they're not going to do that.
And it just seems like every time there's a movement on the other side, and you find out maybe an agenda among some people of the FBI or elsewhere, the Department of Justice, prior to Senator Sessions arriving there, something happens on the Mueller side. an indictment's handed down. Manafort's given house arrest. Gates comes forward. So I almost just feel as though on some level, Mueller seems to have a PR agent on his team to say, we got to we have to leak out somehow that there's something going on our side.
Well, let's hope that's not true.
Yeah.
That's what happens during the elections. We saw that happen. Hillary Clinton will release something when something negative happened against her. She would release something on
Change
Trump.
the subject.
Yep.
Right.
All right,
But someone's leaking to the Washington Post about the Mueller probe, that the president's next. And
about Andy McCabe.
And that Attorney General Sessions had a long interview.
All right, come up with a good intro to Jillian based on what you just said.
Based on what I just said. Here's somebody that never hides from the truth. Jillian, what's happening?
I love how your brain works sometimes. Good morning to you guys.
Remember we did one story, we're talking about someone being weird, and he goes, someone who's not weird is Jillian.
And I said, not today. All right, let's get you caught up on this story out of California. Prosecutors don't want any contact between 13 children and the parents accused of torturing and starving them. David and Louise Turpin heading back to court today. As we've learned, the family was planning to move to Oklahoma. It was reportedly interrupted when their daughter escaped from their California home. 6 of the children will be split up in foster care, while the 7 adult siblings will be sent to an assisted living facility. The couple faces up to 94 years in prison. President Trump's America First mantra will take center stage when he heads to Switzerland later today. The commander-in-chief attending the World Economic Forum, where he'll meet with world leaders and business executives, pushing to stop unfair trade and promoting our economy.
America First is not America alone. We are open for business. We're a competitive country.
Expect this president to go there and show what America First continues to look like on the world stage.
Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin and White House advisor Jared Kushner also going on the overseas trip. President Trump will host French President Emmanuel Macron at his first ever state dinner. Fox News confirming the White House event scheduled for April 24th. Macron's visit will feature a formal arrival ceremony, 21-gun salute, and joint press conference. President Trump was Macron's guest in July for Bastille Day in Paris. Let's look at your headlines. Guys.
All right. They're becoming fast friends.
Yes, they are.
And I bet the state dinner is a steak dinner. The president, we have heard, loves steak.
And McDonald's.
And ice cream.
Right. They're not catering. All right. Thank you, Jillian. Meanwhile, a new poll shows Americans are on President Trump's side when it comes to immigration and what he wants. So how does Congress get a better deal for our border? We're going to talk to Georgia Senator David Perdue. He's next.
Plus, today's forecast, kind of slippery.
President Trump's inability to negotiate with Congress is what caused the 3-day government shutdown from which we've just emerged. We're going to have to start on a new basis, and the wall offer is off the table.
President Trump firing back after Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer pulled his offer to fund the border wall. The president tweeting, quote, crying Chuck Schumer fully understands, especially after his humiliating defeat, that if there is no wall, there is no DACA. We must have safety and security together with a strong military for our great people. This, as a new poll, shows a majority of Americans actually side with the president on his immigration policies. Here with reaction is Republican Georgia Senator David Perdue. Senator, good morning to you.
Good morning.
All right, so there's this new Harvard-Harris poll out that polled Americans on their views on immigration. 65% want DACA deal with stronger border. 68% oppose the visa lottery. They want illegal immigration reduced. They think the current border security is inadequate. They want a wall by a majority, and they want their secure rather than open borders. So essentially, Americans are on the same page as the president, aren't they?
Well, this is a great illustration of where the Democrats were just out of touch with the American people. The Schumer shutdown overplayed their hand and misread the American people. 80% of America wants a secure wall, and over 2/3, as you just said, want a DACA solution to include a border security with a wall, an end of chain migration, and an end to this diversity lottery. So the president's been instinctive about this all along, and he's been right.
And for Chuck Schumer, in that soundbite we ran at the beginning, for him to say President Trump's inability to negotiate with Congress is what caused the shutdown, that's not accurate. I mean, he made an offer and Chuck Schumer didn't like it, and that's what happened.
That's exactly what happened. The Schumer shutdown was based on one thing. The Democrats misread the American public. This president's been very consistent all along. He said that any DACA solution, by the way, he wants a compassionate solution to the DACA situation. He wants to give them certainty. But any DACA solution has got to include border security, to include a wall,
right,
an end of chain migration, and an end to this diversity lottery. He's been very clear about that from the beginning.
Right. He's been very clear about it, Senator, and yet Senators Durbin and Flake and Graham brought this proposal to him last Thursday, and part of that stuff was there, but the rest of it wasn't. And he said, "Are you guys kidding? This isn't what I want. Get out of here."
Well, that's exactly right. I mean, this president knows what the American people want. He's instinctive about this issue. It's how he got elected. It's one of the main issues that he got elected on. But look, this is a deal that should get done. The president's done a lot of big deals. He knows instinctively this deal should get done. We've got symmetry here.
Right.
Both sides want to end the diversity lottery. Both sides, to different degrees, want to solve the border security issue. And the president's been proven right over and over that a wall is necessary to do that.
Okay, so you've got a couple of weeks to come up with something in the Senate, but here's the key. You've got to come up with something, you senators, that will pass the House. Otherwise, it's not going anywhere.
Well, we've been meeting with the House. We've had them in a bicameral, bipartisan meeting at the White House just a couple of weeks ago. The president's been very engaged. I was at the White House this week along with some Democrats in different meetings. Look, we've got a plan right now on a roadmap that we believe will not only pass the Senate, but will pass the House. The president is driving this agenda, and he's been very engaged from the beginning.
And does that roadmap have those 4 components that the president wanted?
Do you know this president? Of course it does.
Okay. All right. Otherwise, it ain't going anywhere.
Exactly.
Senator David Perdue from the great state of Georgia. Sir, thank you very much for joining us live.
Thank you.
All right. All right. 7:20 here in New York City. Coming up, In God We Trust in schools, the surprising new move one state is making. We're going to tell you about it. Plus, outrage growing this morning after the NFL rejects this Super Bowl ad from a veterans group because it told players to stand for the anthem. The group's director is here to respond, and I think you know what he's going to tell us.
Time now for your news by the numbers. First, $11 million. That's how much the Alabama special election for Senate reportedly cost taxpayers. And some lawmakers are saying enough is enough. The State House passing a bill to end those kinds of races. It now heads to the Senate. And next, $1.5 million. That's how many felons could soon get voting rights back. But it's all up to the voters down in Florida. This November, they're going to be asked to approve or deny the measure to reinstate the rights to former prisoners. And finally, listen to this. Number 4, that is where Budweiser falls on the list of best-selling beers in the U.S. The king of beers was dethroned, that used to be number 1, by its little brother. Now number 1 is Bud Light, according to Beer Marketers Insights. Coors Light and Miller Lite rounding out the top 3. I guess people want to cut the calories. Right. Three light ones. You know, they do a lot for our Wounded Warriors and for Folds of Honor.
They do.
Yeah, Folds of Honor is coming out with a new beer thanks to Budweiser.
All right, there's a lot of beer talk, but it reminds me, Corona is what I drink because they don't fill up the neck with beer. All right, 5 minutes before the bottom of the hour, the American Veterans Organization, AMVET, submitted this ad for the Super Bowl, for Super Bowl 52, asking players to, quote, please stand during the national anthem. But it was rejected by the league. The NFL says it's because the Super Bowl game program is designed for fans to commemorate and celebrate the game, players, teams, and the Super Bowl. It's never been a place for the advertising that could be considered something of a political statement. Joining us right now with his reaction, the executive director of AMVET himself, Joe Chinelli. Joe, your reaction to the NFL's rejection?
Good morning, Brian. We were surprised and very disappointed, and we felt this was a strong form of corporate censorship. We didn't really know what to take of it at first. They came to us about a week and a half ago and asked us if we would be interested in placing this full-page ad in the Super Bowl program, and their ad agency even mentioned our Americanism program and thought that'd be a good concept to focus on.
Right. The NBA is running this at their All-Star game?
NBA, the NHL, and NASCAR will be running this at 26 of their races this year.
So here's what the NFL went on to say. We look to work with an organization and asked if it would consider other options, such as please honor our veterans. They chose not to, and we asked it to consider using please stand for our veterans. Production was delayed as we awaited an answer. The organization did not respond, and the program ultimately went into production meetings to meet the deadlines. So, your reaction?
Well, First, that statement outlines a series of events that we did not experience. We were highly engaged with the advertising agency. That statement also does talk about the fact that there was a agency between us and the NFL. They're the ones who we communicated with. They're the ones who came and pitched us for this ad. We met all the deadlines, and we did respond to them at the end when we told them no, we would not change our message, that our message is our values, and we can't change our values.
All right, so I want you to watch this, Joe. The commissioner of the league, Roger Goodell, talking yesterday at an economics club meeting, talked about the NFL players and the controversy around taking a knee.
Our players were all trying to do what's in the best interest of communities that they live in, that they care about, and trying to improve them. And I admire that a great deal. I wish all our players were standing for the national anthem. I always did, and I always told them that. But we really took the time to understand them, and I think we could use a little bit more of that in our society.
But is he taking the time to understand you and how you guys feel? Does freedom of speech go both ways?
No, exactly right. The league has gone out of their way and taken a lot of criticism and lost a lot of money in protecting the freedom of speech and expression for their employees, their players, and we respect that. We don't argue against that, but we do believe that we should be able to, especially since we're paying, to be able to express our stance on this situation as well. And all we did is simply ask, please stand.
Right, and in the big picture, no one's saying that that we couldn't improve our communication between all creeds and colors and races. No one's saying that their cause does not have validity. We're just questioning how they're going about showing that they want attention to it. The national anthem is the issue, not the issue, correct?
You're absolutely right, and we're a patriotic organization. We're also a diverse organization, and we address these diversity issues and racial injustices and things like that. We address those through our organization as well, but we try to do that in the proper time and place, and we wanted to make it clear that our organization feels that people should be standing for the national anthem, and we just are simply asking them. We're not criticizing them if they choose not to.
I just hope they come back to you and give you the spot. Joe Chinelli, thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Brian. Appreciate it.
Okay.
If your viewers agree with us, please join us.
Okay, how?
Well, if they come to amvets.org for veterans, we want you to join us, stand with us. If you don't, find a way to support us. We have a lot of different ways out there on our Americanism program. We go into the schools on a regular basis, and we're helping teach our America's youth about the importance of patriotism and respecting our flag.
And I remember AmVets sponsoring everything from Little League to our soccer league, even when I was younger. Thanks so much for all you do, and keeping veterans first and foremost in the front of everybody's minds. Thanks. Appreciate it, Joe.
Brian.
All right, and we know fundamentally the NFL is a very patriotic organization. Hopefully they'll find a resolve to this. Meanwhile, stunning text messages between these two FBI officials reveal a secret society at the agency. We're quoting them. And one senator says that's just the tip of the iceberg. Former federal prosecutor Andy McCarthy here to discuss that next. And Rosie O'Donnell goes off the rails again. Her newest unhinged tweet takes aim at Sarah Sanders. Tell me when she's on the rails. That would be bigger news.
Someday I'll be living in a big old city. Someday I'll be.
Corruption, more than bias, but corruption at the highest levels of the FBI and that secret society. We have an informant that's talking about a group that were holding secret meetings off-site. There's so much smoke here. There's so much suspicion.
Let's stop there. A secret society, secret meetings off-site of the Justice Department.
Correct.
And you have an informant saying that.
Yes.
Oh, man, so there's an informant helping congressional investigators. Let's bring in Andrew McCarthy, former federal prosecutor, former U.S. attorney in New York Southern District. He's also a columnist at National Review. Andy, what do you make of that interview Bret Baier had with Senator Ron Johnson last night, where he was talking about there is a secret society reportedly in the FBI. They meet off-site, and apparently they were out to get the president, this president.
Well, you know, what I want to see, Steve, is it bias or corruption? That was what was alluded to. And, you know, bias is what you feel. Corruption is what you do. And if they have evidence that, you know, these guys acted on their political biases in a way that infected their job performance, that's very alarming. if it's just, kind of dopey humor, I'd hate the thought of somebody having, sort of followed me around through 20 years as a prosecutor, because there's a lot of gallows humor that goes on in a job where you're investigating bad people all the time. I mean, it's just a fact of life. But that stuff always gets checked at the door, or at least it's always supposed to get checked at the door when you're at the point of applying the facts or the law to the facts. And so what we need to see is what they did, not what they shot their mouths off about.
And that's why the whistleblower could be so valuable. And that's why those 5 months of text messages would be valuable that seem to be missing because of that newfangled thing called a Samsung phone that evidently doesn't save text messages.
Right. Your government at work.
Yeah. But in terms of them using terms like secret society and plan, a plan, the stuff that they're saying is so clumsy. This is not something indicative that I think the FBI, this is not how I thought that they worked. Does it seem like how the FBI interacts to you?
Well, again, Brian, we have to separate out what they say and what they do. So, for example, I won a close case one time in my career. And, when we were sort of laughing about it back at the office, I commented that it requires no talent to convict the guilty. Now, if you heard me say that in the environment that we're in, that would probably be the end of my career if somebody thought I seriously meant that. So I'm hesitant about, just because I've been in this environment for so long, of convicting people on the stupid things that they say.
Do they have to speak up? I hear you. But do they have to answer this?
Corrupt things they do.
Do you want answers from them?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the issue here. When you go from the point of like joking around to saying we need an insurance policy against a Trump candidacy, in circumstances where it seems that you've used this partisan propaganda screed, the Steele dossier, which is salacious and unverified, and evidently has been brought to a court to get authorized surveillance authority, that's a lot more serious than a bunch of guys saying stupid stuff. And that needs to be looked into.
Well, if you look at, I understand what you're saying as far as the text messages are concerned, but if they have the secret meeting happening, ways to go against this president and to make him look bad and to take him down within the FBI, that in and of itself is illegal, correct?
Well, of course, if they're conspiring to do something that violates the law, or if they're conspiring in any way to obstruct justice, that isn't a bunch of guys sitting around talking and saying stupid stuff. That's agreeing to violate federal law.
Right.
But, the jump from one thing to the next is something that has to be proved with hard evidence. Right. There's an awful lot of places in the FBI that you can have covert conversations. So, I'm a little bit skeptical about the idea that, these fellas all have to go off to an offsite and have their sinister meetings. But I'm open-minded about it because there's been a lot of funky stuff that's gone on here. So let's see the proof.
Exactly. Well, it sounds like Devin Nunes and some other members of Congress on the Republican side are trying to show the American public some proof. There's this 4-page FISA abuse memo that they've apparently written up. They're trying to get it declassified, trying to present it to folks, and that would be hard evidence of corruption, right?
Yeah, we would hope so, depending on what's in it. I'm inclined to believe that there's serious stuff in the memo, because there'll be an awful lot of people with egg on their face if there isn't. The criticism about, the fact that it's probably a one-sided partisan document coming from people who championed this dossier, which is like the one-sided partisan document of all time, that is salacious, unverified, and apparently used in federal court to get spying authority on the opposition party's candidate. I'd be a lot more alarmed about that than a 4-page memo. A 4-page memo, under circumstances where we need information, should be something everyone would welcome, I think.
Sure. Andy, for the folks who are watching, you wrote a great op-ed in National Review, and essentially you talk about how the Hillary email caper was whitewashed, and it wasn't the Department of Justice, it wasn't the FBI. You point the finger directly at the former president of the United States, Barack Obama.
Yeah, I've never understood, Brian. It seems to me that, Steve, I'm sorry. It seems to me that they've always tried to go bottom up with this, in the sense that it was the FBI that threw the case or the Justice Department. And I think what you need to separate out is who are the most visible actors. And obviously, Director Comey was very out front in all of this, versus who are the real decision makers. And the fact is, if President Obama did not want Mrs. Clinton charged, she was not going to be charged by his subordinates. That was not going to happen. And what happened here is Obama himself engaged in these email conversations with Mrs. Clinton, knowing he was doing it on her private email.
He used a
and they were
pseudonym.
discussing things that were clearly, very sensitive government matters. You could not have prosecuted that case without exposing that fact.
And no one
So I think
ever
that's
brings
a
up
real
that the
additional
president.
reason why this case was never going to be authorized in the first place.
Andy, you believe that since the president was using his private email, interacting with the Secretary of State using her private email, that was the linchpin that says that he will not turn on the Secretary of State because he looks worse. It shows he knew the whole time how she was doing this.
And they classified it all,
Brian,
right?
Let me be clear, though. I'm not saying President Obama was using his private email. From what we can determine from the reporting, it looks like it was a pseudonym. It wasn't his real name, but it was an official government email. But the violation here is that he knew he was talking on a private email channel, that is Mrs. Clinton's account, and they were discussing very important government matters that shouldn't be discussed in that setting.
If folks would like to read the editorial, go to National Review Online. Andy, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Have a great day.
You too. Jillian has some headlines for you at home. Hey, Jillian.
That's right. Good Wednesday morning to you guys, to you at home as well. Let's start with this story. New information on the Taliban's deadly attack at an upscale hotel in Afghanistan. The State Department says multiple Americans were killed and injured when gunmen stormed the Intercontinental Hotel in Kabul. Earlier, former CIA officer Mike Baker told us it could have been an inside job.
This is the problem in Afghanistan, this is the problem in Iraq that we faced all these years, is the potential for somebody who's on the inside of one of the facilities that either we or private security are guarding to turn and provide information to the hostiles.
The 13-hour hotel siege leaving a total of 20 people dead. The exact number of Americans killed still unknown. Putting God front and center, a new bill could require Florida schools to prominently display the words "In God We Trust." The bill receiving unanimous approval from an education committee with both Republicans and Democrats praising the idea. The phrase first appeared on Florida's flag as part of the state seal back in 1968. Lawmakers then adopted it as the state motto in 2006. Supporters say it will help kids learn about history. Well, a reporter gets tripped up on live TV. Just stop what you're doing and watch.
Schnee bis in die Niederungen. Örtlich besteht Glatteisgefahr.
So the woman, obviously, as you can see, slips. She falls to the floor while giving the forecast in Switzerland. It's unclear why she lost her balance. We've all had moments.
Is she okay? It looks like she hit her head.
I think, I mean, I can't confirm or deny if she's okay or injured. I don't know, but we've all had moments where you...
Not like that.
No, but
John,
where you do embarrassing things on TV.
Someone just waxed the floor,
I've
I
been
guess.
there, maybe. I've not fallen, but I actually, I spilled an entire full mug of hot coffee on myself last year, right as our show started.
That's a problem.
It's online.
It shows
You
you're
can look it
human.
up.
All right, Rosie O'Donnell goes off the rails again. Her newest unhinged tweet taking aim at the press secretary to the President of the United States. Some quick headlines for you. First up, a man is recovering after a massive metal shard crashed through his windshield and hit him in the face. Look at that hole right there. His wife says it's a miracle he's alive.
When I seen him, I thought he was dead. I've never in my life seen something so graphic. God was with him that night. He had to have been.
Couple thinks the metal fell off a passing tractor-trailer truck driving down a highway in North Carolina. And having a smartphone doesn't make you smart. It means you just have a phone. Just ask this guy giving his iPhone a battery taste test. Watch this. Yeah, it exploded. The guy apparently took a bite out of the battery at his store in China, causing it to explode in his face. He was reportedly just trying to see if it was real. Note to man in the store, it was real. Boom. All right, it is 7:48 now here in New York City. Let's talk a little bit about a spat that has gone viral.
Rosie O'Donnell had some harsh words for Sarah Huckabee Sanders. She tweeted out a response. Nicole Wallace, who's a Republican, she had a harsh tweet about Sarah Huckabee Sanders, basically saying you have a tough job, you're smoother than Spicer, more stable than Mooch, but if you ever use your tax-funded, oh gosh, I keep losing it. Okay, if you ever use your tax-funded job again to denigrate the intelligence of a reporter or a sitting U.S. senator, you're fired. So Rosie jumped on the train and she sent out this tweet. Brian, you want to read it?
All right. And who on Trump's team would ever consider doing that? She is doing exactly what he wants, and so she will sit in hell, no doubt. Said something very similar to Paul Ryan. She also speculated why some Democratic female senator is always frowning. She went on to say Trump is the darkness itself. So Rosie O'Donnell, if you listen to her talk, I was listening to her being interviewed on Howard Stern, and she says that she lives every day for Donald Trump, something terrible that basically happened to Donald Trump, and she's not going to finish at the 2 years. She's obsessed with this whole thing.
First of all, I think she probably will not be invited to the president's first state dinner. Just saying. And the other thing is, Sarah Huckabee Sanders is doing quite a job, and it is driving the political left crazy.
That's why you have these liberal women that are attacking women. Isn't that like the biggest no-no ever, according to liberals, unless they're women on the other side?
Oh, hypocrisy?